Oh, that's quite. It's a little intense to talk right after that's over.
Yeah, it's short and sharp. Yeah.
I know you've been looking at the print. You're looking at the film this week to get ready. You've seen it a few times. What's it like seeing it after a period of time not having seen it?
It's quite strange, in particular because the way we made the film, and I don't know how many of the audience are familiar with the way we made the film, but it was a no-budget film in the true sense. We got it to our first festival. We spent about $6,000 on the entire movie. So it was all myself and Emma and a group of our friends getting together each Saturday to shoot about 15 minutes worth of footage. And we did that for about a year and put the thing together that way. So when I look at the film now, I see all these friends of mine who now all look a bit older. Luckily, I'm not in the film, so I can't see how much older I look. And I see all my stuff, some of which I still have, because all the props, all the things, they're all just our things. And so, we shot, a lot of the film was shot in my parents' house, and, I recognize that. So the whole thing is, it's very interesting to see it, just on that level of watching, all of these things from our past, particularly because the story, with its structure, everything is somewhat connected by the props in the film and those kind of elements, and they're all just real things from our lives. So it's
Wow.
It's interesting.
At the time you made this, you were going to school in London. Mm-hmm. You had made some shorts. Were you looking for a feature idea, or did this idea just come to you? How did that all happen?
We'd made a couple of short films, sort of in using the production methodology that we wound up employing in this. We had, a few years before, we'd actually tried to do a feature-length project, and never really been able to finish it. And the limitations we hit technically in trying to make a 16mm feature film, we addressed some of those technical limitations, and over a period of a few years, doing a couple of short films, figured out how to sort of get around some of those things. So some of it's a little obvious. It's things like shooting in black and white, not in color, because when you have no access to lighting packages and all the rest, and you have to just do things on the fly, you can make black and white look, you can create a style with it in a way that you really can't with color photography unless you have somewhat greater resources. Introducing the film with voiceover, so the sound would be clean for the first couple of minutes at least, and ending that way, that kind of thing. So we did, and keeping it short as well. We tried to make the film as tight as it could be in terms of the series of events that was going on. And in fact, I actually wrote the script in this, according to this structure whereby, because the film expands outwards in all directions at once, if you like. You get the headline version of the film, man bites dog, whatever. And then each scene is sort of expanding the story in terms of filling in the gaps between the events you've already seen.
Yeah.
And the thinking behind that is, if we ran out of money halfway through, we'd have a film. But I think as it is, we shot everything that was scripted, apart from maybe one or two things that didn't seem so important. But we kept it as short as we could. So it's an hour and 10 minutes. It's pretty tight.
Yeah. How did the idea come to you? Did it come, is it come in that kind of obvious way, or did it just gradually develop?
Well, I was living, as you said, I was living in London on Tottenham Court Road, just off Oxford Street, which is the west end of London. It's incredibly crowded, very much with tourists. So as soon as we went out of my flat, and in fact, Jerry, you see him walking along at the beginning, he's just walking out of where he used to live into the throng of Tottenham Court Road. And I just became interested one day walking along with this notion of, instead of seeing, a crowd of people, say, okay, who's that person and where are they going? And I didn't, follow people around or anything like that, but it just sort of, the notion stuck with me, and combined that with the experience of getting burgled and coming home and seeing your door to your flat smashed open, and realizing, there was something about looking at the door and realizing that it was very fragile, and anyone could have broken it down. It wouldn't have required any force. And you look at, window panes, they're made of glass, they're very easy to smash. So the thing that stops people invading your life in that way, it's about social protocols. It's about respecting other people's barriers. And there seemed to be a relationship between that and the idea of not picking someone out of a crowd and following them and imposing yourself or stalking them, essentially. There seemed to be a relationship there that was worth exploring.
Yeah. Now, I noticed that Emma Thomas is credited on the film. Did you meet her during the course of the film? Had you known her already?
No,
Still
known
your
her for
producer?
a long time. Still my producer.
Yes, still your producer.
And wife, yes.
Yes.
She's here somewhere and should take a bow. Where are we? No, she's not going to stand up.
Yeah, what was your biggest expense out of the $6,000?
When we first started doing the festival circuit, it was at a time when there was a certain amount of healthy competition to see who could have made the cheapest possible film. I don't know if that really exists anymore, because shooting on video, it's perfectly possible to do a film like this without spending anything, effectively, to get it to that finished on tape sort of festival stage. But we were shooting on film, and the only thing we spent any money on at all was buying the film stock and processing it. Everything else, people just brought their own lunch and made their own costumes or wore their own clothes. And so really, I think ultimately the biggest expense by far was just the film, the processing, the actual physical thing of the film.
Wow. And you shot it, you shot it for so long, over a year, because just for monetary reasons, or people had jobs, or?
Well, we all had jobs, so it's, basically for money reasons. And it's sort of, we worked out that if we could shoot, I think I worked out that I could shoot a 2.5 to 1 ratio. That is to say, for every 2.5 minutes of film you shoot, you could get a minute of finished film. The ratio on a standard film would be 15 to 1, something like that. On something like The Dark Knight, it's like 400 to 1. Yeah. It's just every film, it increases exponentially. But when you think about slating each take and all that stuff we're having to do, you're basically having to tell the actors they've got to make the film really with just first takes and the occasional second takes. And when I see the film now, you were asking what it's like to watch the film again. The thing I'm really struck by is that this great group of actors who agreed to do this for me and everything. The entire film's made of first takes or second takes, primarily first takes. They really did an incredible job, and the way they got there was they agreed to rehearse the film for about 6 months. So we would work the scenes, just rehearse them, so that they knew each scene like a stage play.
Wow.
And my feeling was, well, when an actor works on stage, there's no second take. They just do it and you get through it. And so the way we shot the film was I would put the handheld camera on my shoulder, and the whole film's handheld apart from the shots in the police station. And they would just go through it, and I would just follow one of them with the camera, and then I would follow the other one with the camera, and that was the way the entire film was done. And that way, I felt like we would just find a location. Sometimes, on the day or the day before, we'd find out, a restaurant would let us shoot, or somebody's rooftop or whatever. They'd know all the scenes because they'd rehearsed the entire movie. So we would just say, okay, we've got the restaurant, we could do the restaurant scene, get everybody together, get there and shoot it.
Wow.
And that was really the way we went about the whole thing.
And are they still acting? You sound like you're still in touch with them.
Well, we're still in touch. Lucy Russell is still acting, but the other guys aren't. And I think it's a great shame, because I think they're
terrific.
Fantastic. Yeah. Jerry did a little bit. If people know Batman Begins, he does a little bit at the end of that, which you can see him in. He's one of those kind of guys watching the radar screen, if you like, at the end, going, "Oh, everything's going to blow up," And he came and did that for fun and stuff. But no, and Alex works as an architect. So,
really?
Yeah.
It's funny. I noticed everyone chuckled at the Batman logo on the door.
Yeah, very prescient, I suppose. It's one of the things with looking at the film for me is things like that. Nothing is put there. Nothing. It was just the way. That's where Jerry actually lived. That is actually his flat. That's all his stuff. Nothing. We just sort of made the scene work with the reality of what he's living in. And the thing I am struck by watching it, the technical limitations of the film, the crudeness of the film, strikes me. But the textures of the real places we're shooting in are amazing. And when you do bigger films, where you sort of construct things from the ground up, it's unbelievably difficult to try and achieve those kind of textures. The paint peeling on the walls and the things, and there's so much skill that goes into production design's art in terms of making that that happen when it's artificial.
Yeah.
And so I think I've actually spent all the films since that one trying to, to get the massive resources to get back to when we had nothing, because it's a similar, it's a similar texture you're after. It's
no, I know
just
what you mean.
reality, you know.
Yeah. Wow. And I think I remember once you said that the actors' haircuts were a problem because it went on for so long.
Yeah, I mean, Jerry was quite upset about having to grow his hair for that long. He didn't like the look for the long hair, kind of scruffy. And Alex, he's just a lovely guy, but just turned up one day and he'd shaved his head. And we were about 2/3 of the way through shooting, and he shaved his head. And in the same conversation where I was sort of staring at him, announced that he was leaving for Australia in a month and kind of never coming back or whatever. And if you look, careful in the film, just there's a scene at the end where his hair is quite a bit different than it is in the rest of the film, because it grew just enough, like 2 days before he actually had to get on the plane and film it. But it was, I mean, to be fair to the actors, you can't complain too much because it was a massive commitment.
Yeah.
But basically saying, okay, it's going to take at least, I think I probably told them 6 months, and it wound up being a year, that they had to kind of, keep their appearance close enough. There's quite a lot of variation though if you watch it a million times. Or whatever,
You'll see it. I mean, you mentioned the thing about the texture of reality. I mean, this is kind of be an odd question. Do you miss anything about those days?
Yeah, I miss an enormous amount about those days. There's the spontaneity that you're able to achieve shooting a film in that way, where on most shooting days, the cast and crew and all the equipment could fit into one London taxi.
Wow.
And that gives you an incredible freedom. We would go into a location, no permits, just favors, and, everybody just doing it sort of for fun. And that does give you an enormous amount of freedom if you embrace the limitations of it. I mean, obviously there are massive limitations technically to that, which could become creative limitations if you don't put them in the script. If you write the script knowing that you're going to have those limitations, then I think it becomes freedom. And I do very much miss the spontaneity. Certainly, when we made The Prestige, I talked a lot with my production designer, Nathan Crowley. I talked a lot with my DP, Wally Pfister, about trying to get back to a very, very loose style of filmmaking. And we shot that film with a lot of handheld camera, a lot of kind of similar setups in a weird way. Because, of course, one of the things about when you can't afford lights, or you don't want to take the time to light, and you want to let the actors have a bit of freedom, the best way to do that is to have a couple of big windows and get them to stand next to the windows. Yeah. So there's a lot of people standing by windows in the film. But funnily enough, if you watch The Prestige, you'll see a lot of the same kind of tricks, and the same because what Wally did is he just tried to give us, myself and the actors, the freedom to move around the place. And that is one of the things I do miss, because I shot the film myself, and you shot it on an old Arri BL, which it's quite a heavy camera, and so you get it on the shoulder. It's very well balanced, and you could really just follow what the actors were doing and not worry at all about hitting marks too much and things like that. Yeah. And that actually is a really fun way to work photographically as well as for the actors.
Now, you finished the film. I know you got an excellent review from Alexander Walker, who was one of the top critics in England at the time. But nothing happened over there, and you ended up taking it to the United States. Am I telling that correctly, or?
Well, not quite really in that order. I mean, we made the film in England, and I'm half English, half American, and so as I had the opportunity to bring the film over here and try and do something with it. And I think that the North American film festival circuit is really unique in the world. It's really unrivaled in terms of the access that festivals like Slamdance will give filmmakers starting with absolutely nothing and no connections and no avenues to get the film seen by anybody. Yeah. There's really nothing like it in the world, I think. I mean, the festivals in Europe are bigger, more glamorous affairs. Some of the local films are quite small, but they don't tend to come from nowhere. And we were sort of hitting a bit of a brick wall over there. So we started the film at the San Francisco Film Festival and had a good time there and got onto the sort of festival circuit. And then really sort of finished up at Slamdance. I had great screenings there, and it was a very great platform for us, really, and secured us distribution for the film, and it got played in, like at the New Art, we played for a week, and Film Forum in New York and places like that. And France, actually, we got excellent distribution. I mean, in a weird way, we had to sort of bring the film to America, do that circuit, and then we could take it back to Europe. And then get it seen. And the film, for the size of the film, it was seen surprisingly widely.
Yeah. Did Sundance turn it down? Is this story true?
I couldn't answer that. It would be undiplomatic. But, I don't want to get in trouble with Jeff Gilmore or any of those guys. But we were very happy to be at Slamdance.
Was that exciting? When Slamdance took it on, was that, since this is a Slamdance night, was that an exciting thing to have happen?
It was fantastic. It's an incredible energy there. For people who haven't been to Park City, I mean, you go there and even, the big festival, that, is somewhat scrappy in a way. They're projecting films in the library and all this sort of stuff. And Slamdance is the extreme of that, And you, as Dan was reminding me earlier on today, you have to go and put your own posters up, and you go up and down the street, subtly putting your poster over everyone else's poster, getting in arguments about that. And it's really an amazing time, and it's a really fun thing. Yeah, it was really a unique experience, and one we all treasure.
I noticed the music and the sound more this time. It seemed that you must have that was a really important factor. I wonder if you could talk about what you put into that. It seems like there was a lot of thought and work went into that.
Yeah, we paid a lot of attention. The music was by Dave Julian, who has done all my films other than the Batman ones, which we did with Hans Zimmer and James Newton Howard. But, for example, we did The Prestige, you did Memento, and we did short films together and everything. And he came up, I think, with a very interesting score. I wanted him to do this kind of ambient thing, but with these peculiar rhythms as well and stuff. And I think it holds up very well. I was pleased to hear it. The sound mix, we tried to be pretty spare with the whole thing because those were the resources we had. Yeah. And when I listen to it now, I don't think I ever quite got to finish it the way I want to do in certain aspects. I think some of the dialogue is still too unclear and things like that. Yeah, yeah. So one of the reasons I was in the lab looking at it is I want to actually, do one final sort of pass on it and remix it now that I have the resources to do it. But not to change the character of it, because the quality of the recording, the raw quality of the recording, is something I really kind of like. And funnily enough, on all my films, on the big films, you sit there on the dub stage, and I get into a lot of arguments with everybody about wanting to always use the production tracks and not replace dialogue, or not, because I think that there's a very tactile sense that those recordings give you, where you hear a bit of the footsteps, a bit of the room, a bit of the actual resonance of the voices. This is a pretty extreme example of that, but keeping a little of that texture in a big glossy film, I think, is an interesting thing to do. I also think performance, raw performance, if it's captured reasonably well on the microphone, there's no substitute for that. If you get the actors in and you ADR it, it's a mess. There are one or two things. I mean, there's one moment in there where I've actually just replaced one of an off-camera line with my own voice, just because I didn't have the actor, and I want to go back in and fix that, because it makes me jump every time I hear it.
It's interesting, I mean, obviously the leap you've taken from a film with these resources to the Batman films is enormous, but they seem of a piece to me, I mean, and I just wanted to talk to you about how difficult that is to keep that kind of intensity and keep the kind of almost independent feeling with a film that big, because I think you've managed to do that.
Well, I think if I've managed to do it, it's because, certainly it's the struggle. I mean, the struggle is, and it's nothing to do with creative integrity or anything like that. I've been very fortunate in, particularly the Batman films, I was given an enormous amount of creative freedom. But just physically and logistically, to try and kind of turn that oil tanker, you know, with the same facility you were doing with a rowboat. Ultimately, it is impossible, I think, but you find ways to try and do it. And one of the ways I've found is to work with the same people, the same director of photography, the same designer, and, you know, work with the same people on multiple films and try and develop a shorthand and a trust. Because certainly the relationship I have with Wally Pfister, who's shot, you know, both the Batman films, all my films since this one, which he would never lay claim to. But everything since then, he's shot for me, and he, you know, we have a degree of trust where he'll let certain things fly and be a little looser about things because he knows that we'll use the best bits and, you know, make it work. And he's a great contributor in terms of maintaining some of that spontaneity in terms of the making of the film. And my production designer, Nathan Crowley, as well, shares my love of shooting on location. And I think for the entire process, as soon as you're in a real place, for everybody from the actors outwards, everything becomes a little more real, a little more spontaneous, a little, you know, people are able to create in a slightly different way than when you're on a sound stage. So those are the kind of things that help, really.
You just alluded to it. Is it kind of the struggle?
I think it is, because I think the job for me of a film director on set is to be, I mean, I like to say it's to be the advocate for the audience on set. I'm supposed to be the audience on set. I'm supposed to have blinkers on and really be able to see what's going to be in the frame and how that's going to make me feel in the movie theater in you know, 10 months' time, years' time. You can't be thinking about the process and the size of the process and the craziness of the process, you know, all these trucks and hundreds of people all coming together to do this thing. That circus element of what large-scale filmmaking is, I think my job is to be immune to that, to just ignore it and take it for granted or whatever, and be focused on the particular shot. And in doing that, if you can get into that state of mind, you find yourself back where you were when you were making the small film.
Yeah, it's interesting that you've been able to make that happen. It's not everyone who's been able to make that happen.
Well, I don't know if everyone even tries. I mean, everybody's different. Every director's different. For me, that's always been an important thing, is just to keep creatively doing the same process. I haven't really wanted to show any versatility particularly. You know, I haven't wanted to be, you know, another director. I've just wanted to keep doing my thing and doing the thing that keeps me the most interested. You know, tried to work in an instinctive way in that sense.
Well, you know, I think that's a good place to stop. We could go on for hours, but probably they wouldn't like it. So thank you for your time, and thank you for your film.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.